When you hear the name Cleopatra, what comes to mind? A queen of legendary beauty, a romance with Julius Caesar, a tragic ending involving an Egyptian cobra. For centuries, those stories have defined one of history's most famous women, but they only tell part of the truth. Behind the myths stood a brilliant ruler who spoke multiple languages, mastered diplomacy, and fought against impossible odds to keep Egypt free. This is not simply the story of a queen. It's the story of the last pharaoh who dared to challenge the most powerful empire on earth. Cleopatra VII was born in 69 BC in Alexandria, one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. Although she ruled Egypt, she wasn't ethnically Egyptian. Her family belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, descendants of Ptolemy I, one of Alexander the Great's most trusted generals. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, his empire was divided, and Ptolemy claimed Egypt, creating a dynasty that would last nearly 3 centuries. Alexandria reflected that unique heritage. Greek temples stood beside Egyptian sanctuaries. Merchants from Africa, Asia, and Europe filled its bustling streets, bringing spices from Arabia, ivory from Nubia, grain from the fertile Nile Valley, and luxury goods from lands far beyond the Mediterranean. Towering above the harbor stood the lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, guiding thousands of sailors safely toward Egypt's richest city. Nearby stood the famous Library of Alexandria. While historians continue debating its exact size, there is no doubt it was one of humanity's greatest centers of learning. Scholars gathered there to study mathematics, astronomy, medicine, geography, engineering, philosophy, and literature. Growing up in this extraordinary environment gave Cleopatra an education unlike almost any ruler before her. Ancient writers describe her as exceptionally intelligent. She studied history, science, rhetoric, politics, and economics. More impressively, she learned to speak several languages fluently. Unlike earlier rulers of her dynasty, Cleopatra also learned the Egyptian language itself. Previous Ptolemies governed Egypt while speaking primarily Greek, relying on interpreters to communicate with their own people. Cleopatra chose a different path. She spoke directly with Egyptian priests, officials, and citizens, earning respect that few of her ancestors had achieved. Yet despite its wealth and learning, the royal palace was a dangerous place. The Ptolemaic dynasty had earned a grim reputation for family rivalries. Brothers fought sisters for power. Mothers plotted against sons. Assassinations, betrayals, and political conspiracies were common. Every child growing up inside the palace understood one simple truth: surviving was often harder than ruling. Cleopatra learned those lessons early. When her father, Ptolemy XII, died in 51 BC, 18-year-old Cleopatra inherited the throne alongside her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII. According to royal custom, the 2 siblings were expected to marry and govern together. The arrangement failed almost immediately. Powerful advisors surrounding the young king feared Cleopatra's intelligence and independence. They wanted a ruler they could easily influence, and Cleopatra clearly wasn't that person. Gradually, her name disappeared from official decrees and coins. Decisions were made without her approval. Eventually, she was forced to leave Alexandria entirely. Many rulers would have accepted exile and waited for circumstances to change. Cleopatra refused. Traveling east into the desert, she gathered loyal supporters and recruited an army. She understood that reclaiming her throne through force alone would be difficult. But she also knew that events beyond Egypt's borders were creating new opportunities. Across the Mediterranean, the Roman Republic was tearing itself apart. 2 of Rome's greatest generals, Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great, had become bitter enemies. Civil war spread across Roman territory. Eventually reaching Egypt itself, Pompey fled to Alexandria hoping to find refuge with the young king. Instead, advisors serving Ptolemy XIII made a disastrous mistake. Believing they could gain Caesar's favor, they ordered Pompey's assassination before Caesar even arrived. The plan backfired completely. When Caesar reached Alexandria in 48 BC, he was horrified rather than impressed. Pompey had once been his ally, and although they had become enemies, Caesar believed such a famous Roman deserved dignity, not murder. Watching these events unfold, Cleopatra immediately recognized an opportunity that few others could see. If she could win Caesar's support, she might regain her throne. Ancient historian Plutarch tells the famous story that Cleopatra secretly entered the royal palace hidden inside rolled bedding carried by a trusted servant. Whether every detail is literally true remains uncertain, but historians agree that she met Caesar in secret during those tense days. The meeting transformed history. Rather than encountering a frightened young queen pleading for help, Caesar found a confident ruler who spoke intelligently about politics, economics, and the future of Egypt. Cleopatra understood that Egypt's survival depended on diplomacy as much as military strength. She presented herself not as a victim seeking rescue, but as a capable ally who could bring stability to one of Rome's most valuable partners. Caesar was impressed. Soon he declared that Cleopatra and her brother should rule together according to their father's wishes. Ptolemy XIII refused to accept the decision, and fighting broke out in the streets of Alexandria. The Alexandrian War lasted for months. Roman soldiers battled Egyptian forces while fires consumed parts of the city. During this conflict, later writers claim that sections of the Great Library of Alexandria may have been damaged, although historians continue debating the extent of the destruction. Eventually, Caesar's experienced legions prevailed. Ptolemy XIII fled the battlefield but drowned while attempting to cross the Nile. At just 22 years old, Cleopatra had reclaimed her throne, but her greatest challenges were only beginning. Caesar remained in Egypt for several months, helping restore order after the conflict. During that time, Cleopatra strengthened both her position and her relationship with the Roman leader. In 47 BC, she gave birth to a son named Ptolemy XV, better known as Caesarion. Although Julius Caesar never publicly declared him his official heir, many Egyptians believed the child symbolized an alliance between the world's greatest republic and its oldest kingdom. Not long afterward, Cleopatra traveled to Rome as Caesar's honored guest. She stayed in a luxurious villa outside the city while Caesar introduced ambitious reforms that would permanently reshape Roman politics. Her presence fascinated many Romans, but it also unsettled others. Here was a wealthy foreign queen receiving extraordinary attention from the most powerful man in Rome. Admirers praised her intelligence and confidence, while critics whispered that Caesar intended to make Alexandria the center of his growing empire. Whether those rumors were true remains unknown, but they revealed how influential Cleopatra had become. Everything changed on the Ides of March in 44 BC. Julius Caesar was assassinated inside the Roman Senate by a group of conspirators who feared his growing power. Overnight, Rome once again descended into civil war. Cleopatra immediately realized that Egypt could no longer rely on Caesar's protection. Returning to Alexandria, she focused on strengthening her kingdom while carefully watching events unfold across the Mediterranean. Several years later, another powerful Roman entered her life. His name was Mark Antony. As one of Caesar's closest allies, Antony controlled Rome's eastern territories and summoned Cleopatra to meet him in the city of Tarsus. Once again, the Egyptian queen understood that first impressions mattered. Ancient writers describe her arrival as unforgettable. Her magnificent royal barge sailed slowly along the river beneath deep purple sails, While musicians played, servants burned fragrant incense, and polished gold reflected the afternoon sunlight. Every detail had been carefully planned. Cleopatra wasn't trying to display vanity. She was demonstrating Egypt's wealth, stability, and importance to a man whose friendship could determine her country's future. The meeting exceeded every expectation. Antony admired Cleopatra's intelligence, confidence, and political skill. Their alliance soon became both personal and strategic. Together, they ruled much of the eastern Mediterranean, raised 3 children, and transformed Alexandria into the center of their growing power. Under Cleopatra's rule, Egypt experienced renewed prosperity. Grain exports remained essential to feeding Rome's population. Trade flourished across the Mediterranean, and Alexandria continued attracting scholars, merchants, engineers, and travelers from around the world. Cleopatra personally supervised economic reforms, managed taxation, supported religious ceremonies, and maintained diplomatic relationships with neighboring kingdoms. She was far more than a ceremonial queen. She was an active ruler involved in nearly every aspect of government. Yet while Egypt grew stronger, Rome became increasingly divided. Far to the west, another ambitious leader watched Antony and Cleopatra with growing concern. His name was Octavian, the adopted son and legal heir of Julius Caesar. Unlike Antony, Octavian understood the power of public opinion. Rather than immediately attacking his rival with armies, he launched a political campaign unlike anything Rome had seen before. Roman speeches, poems, and public announcements portrayed Cleopatra as a dangerous foreign queen who had bewitched Antony and threatened Rome itself. She was accused of plotting to move Roman power to Alexandria and place Caesarion above Roman citizens. Much of this was carefully crafted propaganda. Modern historians believe Octavian deliberately exaggerated Cleopatra's influence to convince Romans they were defending their homeland against a foreign threat, rather than fighting another civil war. The strategy worked brilliantly. By 31 BC, diplomacy had failed. The decisive confrontation came at the Battle of Actium off the western coast of Greece. Hundreds of warships filled the sea in one of antiquity's greatest naval battles. For hours, the fleets maneuvered while soldiers, archers, and sailors fought for control of the Mediterranean. Exactly what happened remains debated. Some historians believe Antony's fleet became trapped. Others argue that Cleopatra and Antony attempted a planned breakout once defeat became inevitable. Whatever the reason, Octavian emerged victorious. The surviving Egyptian and Roman ships escaped to Alexandria, but everyone understood the war had effectively been decided. The following year, Octavian invaded Egypt. As Roman forces approached Alexandria, false reports convinced Antony that Cleopatra had already taken her own life. Devastated by the news, he fatally wounded himself. When he discovered Cleopatra was still alive, he was carried to her, dying in her arms according to ancient accounts. Cleopatra now faced the greatest decision of her life. She knew Octavian intended to display her as a prisoner during his triumph through the streets of Rome. For a queen who had spent her entire life defending Egypt's independence, such humiliation was unthinkable. In August of 30 BC, Cleopatra chose death. Ancient tradition says she allowed an Egyptian cobra to bite her, though modern historians continue debating whether poison delivered in another way is more likely. The exact method remains one of history's enduring mysteries. She was only 39 years old. With her death ended more than 3,000 years of pharaonic rule. Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, and Octavian soon became Augustus, Rome's first emperor. Yet Cleopatra's story did not end there. For centuries, Roman writers shaped her reputation as a temptress whose beauty brought powerful men to ruin. Today, archaeological discoveries and modern historical research reveal a far more remarkable woman. She was a multilingual scholar, an accomplished diplomat, a capable economist, and a determined ruler who resisted Rome for more than 2 decades during one of history's most turbulent eras. Her palace now lies beneath the waters of Alexandria, and despite decades of searching, her tomb has never been conclusively identified. Archaeologists continue exploring ancient temples and submerged ruins, hoping one day to uncover the final resting place of Egypt's last pharaoh. Perhaps that is the greatest secret of Cleopatra. She did not become immortal because she was the most beautiful woman in history. She became immortal because she was one of its most extraordinary rulers. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story behind Cleopatra, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to Mark's History channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another journey into the ancient world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next adventure.